Welcome to Pique Your Interest, your go-to podcast for all things mortgage and real estate. Hosted by Tanner Greenwald and Tim Malaskis. We bring you expert insights to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Pique Your Interest podcast. I am Tanner Greenwald with the Greenwald team of First Home Mortgage.
And I'm Tim Malaskis, a loan officer here in the Millersville branch.
And we are going to do a two-part series almost today about home buyers' remorse when they're looking to buy a home. So I feel like when home buyers are out and about, especially in today's market, there's a little bit of regret, anxiety, just mindset stuff that kind of gets in the way of, submitting offers or them even going out and looking at houses. So we're going to kind of break down different things to look out for when, you're out and about in the market and looking for homes and how to kind of do your due diligence. And then in the next episode, we're going to kind of touch on a little bit more. So in today's episode, Tim, why don't you let us know what home buyer's remorse means, I guess, because sometimes people don't know what that means.
Sure. To be clear, I think that it's become a topic more so now than it was before because of COVID. And what we saw during COVID was, super low interest rates, people really excited to buy, an over-competitive market. Any advantage that you could gain to buy a house you were taking. And so people were doing things like, not even looking at the house or not even performing an inspection on the house or offering way more than what they thought the house might be worth or, what the listing price was. Anything that you could do to gain an advantage to get into that house so that you didn't have to enter the next bidding war. So I think COVID kind of exacerbated that, but I think homebuyer remorse has always existed. If you've been in the business long enough, we've all had clients be like, oh man, I really wish I had waited for, a different house, or I really wish I had gotten that other house. And so really homebuyer remorse is just sort of wishing that something else had gone differently. Like maybe you got a different house or different financing terms, or you were able to get a home inspection, but you didn't, you didn't realize what the costs were going to be. Like there's all kinds of things. So it's a feeling of regret or guilt or anxiety that you have over buying this house. Whether it's compared to another house or just this house in general. I would say it's become a much more common thing. There's a lot of stats out there. One of the stats that we looked up was a recent article by the National Association of Realtors cited that 82% of people express regret about a home purchase. There's a lot of, categories to what they sort of regretted the most, and Tanner's going to kind of get into that. But I think that it really boils down to it has become a topic now because of COVID, because so many people bought houses and didn't do it the way that traditionally home buying has been done, and I think there's some regret there. Yeah, because I think people for the longest time had an idea of what it means to buy a home and what it looks like to go out and find a home and put offers in and stuff. And you're right, COVID definitely shifted that, and it almost became like a free-for-all kind of. Yeah. And it was the Wild West out there. Yeah, it was. And people were freaking, we didn't know necessarily how to guide people to handle it as well. So it was wild. Definitely. Yeah. No, so I think that there's a lot of regrets out there. And I think I'll let Tanner talk about what some of those regrets might be. Yeah. So just first things first, hidden costs and unexpected repairs. And those are kind of, I think that comes to the top of mind when people are thinking about, oh gosh, well, if I buy a house, what is this going to look like? So if you just kind of think about it for a sec, if you buy a home, you have property taxes associated with it. You've got homeowners insurance. If you buy a condo, you have, your condo fee. If you buy into an HOA, you've got the HOA fee. All of those have the means to go up at some point, and we can't stop that. It's reflected on where you purchase and what they're doing in that city or county. So just kind of knowing that up front, your monthly payment might be changing at some point if those do increase. I had my property taxes increase, and I was like, what the hell? Same.
Yeah, it was a lot, and it was, and I work in the industry, and it's just something that I had to calm myself down with because it freaked me out,
Totally.
So if you're budgeting for something to change in a monthly payment and it could increase, then that's something where you can just kind of know that if it happens, I'll be okay because I expected this to happen, And then unexpected repairs. If you buy a home, something is going to happen. It might be small, it might be big. You don't know what it's going to be. Have the mindset to know that you're going to have to fix something at some point. And it might be a year after you purchase. It might be 6 months. It might be 2 months after you purchase. Right. You have to replace a refrigerator or something. So, those are some common regrets. Overpaying for the home. So During COVID, we had people that were bidding like 20, 30 and more over asking price. And one of the biggest issues we heard, or, that we were all talking about, was the fact that, what if I go to sell my house in 10 years and the price of homes have gone down, and because this is just happening during COVID, what if I get an appraisal and it doesn't appraise for as much as I bought it for? What if I put myself in just all of those kind of things that are running through people's head. So that was something that we had to have a conversation with them as well. Choosing the wrong neighborhood to purchase in. So that's something I think that everybody always kind of freaks out about a little bit, because if you've got kids, you want to make sure that you got a good school system that your kids are going to. If you have kids or a family or pets or whatever, you don't want to have a neighborhood that you're moving into with high crime rate, things like that. Insufficient space or layout issues. So when I think about that, and what I've kind of learned from talking from clients is, when you, especially after COVID, when people were like shifting jobs, or jobs in general were changing, meaning people weren't coming into the office a lot. They were working from home, so they needed a home office. They needed some bigger backyard space because the kids weren't going in school and they needed some place to kick the kids out to go play. So things like that. When you're looking to buy a home, you're thinking about that stuff. So what if I can't find a house that has a home office and I'm stuck, having to work from home and I don't have anywhere to work at home? Things like that, and then compromising on must-haves due to market pressure. That's more so like, hey, I wanted a big backyard because I wanted to garden, and that's a hobby of mine that I love to do. So I can't buy a home that doesn't have space for a garden, kind of thing. And that upsets people sometimes. And I get that. If you're buying a home and it's a huge purchase for you, you want to spend your money for what you want, right, and what you're looking for. So people were worried about, like, what if I have to compromise on things that I actually want and I've saved up to buy in a home? So these are all things that we have experienced with clients, but I've also heard outside people talk about, these problems. So, what should they do to prepare, Tim?
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's really a lot to unpack there, because there's so many things that you could possibly regret. So I think, the first thing is just do all the research that you possibly can do and make sure you're planning ahead. And so that means, look at things like the neighborhood or the market trends, or, what the HOA rules might be. There's a lot of zoning laws that are, specifically in Anne Arundel County where we're located, a lot of zoning laws that are possibly going to change pretty soon. Again, COVID things like, do you commute to work? Do you not commute? If you do commute, how far of a commute is that going to be? What does the traffic look like? So I think, there's a lot of planning ahead, doing some research, thinking, where is my house in relation to what the rest of my life looks like? What sorts of things does the house have that I might enjoy or not enjoy or might have to pay for? So things like that. And I think along with that, creating a realistic budget. We've talked about this in the past. We even have an episode about budgeting. But creating a budget and sticking to it. I find a lot of times when you're talking to people, in my initial conversation with people, one of the questions I ask is, what would you be comfortable spending on a mortgage payment? Because I honestly don't care what the maximum amount somebody qualifies for is. I care more about what you're comfortable spending. And what I've found is in, the younger generation that's buying houses right now, like millennials and Gen Z, they are more focused on a quality of life than previous generations. And so they are much better at forming a budget, sticking to a budget, saying, I do not want to spend more than this on a mortgage payment. And they're really good about not going over that amount. So
I just listened to a podcast on this, literally, yes, exactly what you're saying. So I agree.
My experience is that's what's going on. Younger people, maybe it's, 2008, 2009, they saw the crash, they saw people affected by that, or, COVID changed the outlook of what they're looking for. Whatever it is, the generation, behind me, your generation, much better at saving money, much better at budgeting, much better to actually sticking with the budget, which is really important too. Get pre-approved, talk to people like Tanner or I, and let's talk about all of these things. Let's have these conversations. Let's make sure when we're creating a budget that it actually makes sense. You might think you could spend, $3,000 a month on a mortgage, but we might feel like there could be some other things in there that you're not considering. So, whether it's, you also have to get, you have a cell phone bill we don't talk about. You have, utilities we don't talk about. We don't take those things into consideration in the pre-approval process because it's not something that's really required, but I think it's a conversation worth having. So having a conversation with us about things like that could probably prepare you for a more, I don't want to say joyous, but like a more pleasant experience in buying a house and leaving you with less regret later on down the line as a result of that.
Yeah.
And then like Tanner hit on, like, what are your must-haves? You know, what are the things that I absolutely have to have in this house? What are some of the things that I'm willing to compromise on? What are some things that are, you know, just wants and not needs? You know, sort of a lot of people draft a pro and a con list. Maybe you could draft a I must have this list and a I could live without it, but I'd prefer not to list.
Yeah.
And I think finding houses that sort of check the boxes on your must-haves, fantastic. And if you can find some that check off the boxes on your I would really, really, really like this, even better.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, thinking about things longer term, creating a plan, sticking with a budget, talking to people who have experience and can ask, you know, thoughtful follow-up questions that make you think about things you didn't think about before. And then just knowing what it is that you absolutely have to have, what you want, and hopefully you can find some sort of, you know, meshing, some sort of marriage between all of those.
You had a client recently.
I did.
So I was in
It's
Tim's
exactly what I was
office.
thinking
Yeah,
about.
I was in, unless, well, I'm just going to say it and you can talk about it, but I was in
Yeah.
Tim's office the other day and I'm listening into a client conversation, and exactly what he's telling you right now is what he had to do on the phone with this client. And I'll let you kind of go in deeper about it, but it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So, you know, I was talking to a client, and I know that she's talking to other lenders, and that's fantastic. That's what people should do. I'm all for that. You know, the conversation changed from what do I qualify for, and you know, how much can I spend, to, you know, I started asking questions about, think about the long term. So, you know, just this is a divorce situation that's going on. So there's, you know, some child support that's coming in, but the children are a little bit older. So the child support's not going to last forever. So you can use that income to help you qualify for a mortgage. But the reality is, eventually, a few years down the road, that income isn't going to be there anymore. It's going to be non-existent. So how does that make you feel about what your mortgage payment is down the line? You know, let's say you're comfortable for the next 2 years or whatever it is. What happens in year 3 when, you know, half of your child support stops because you have an adult child and you don't receive that support? So, you know, if we don't have these kinds of conversations, then, you know, somebody buys a house and they're happy for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, you know, a significant stream of income is cut off. Then what happens?
Yeah.
You know, you need to think about things like that. And I don't know, and especially in like a divorce situation, there's so many things going on. You can't possibly think of everything. But I think, again, getting pre-approved by people like Tanner or I, helping you figure out what it is that you might be missing, that you might not be thinking about a little further down the road, goes an absolute long way. I mean, it was a really hard conversation. It was a really long conversation too. But I feel like it ended well. And I feel like we were more, you know, we were more like simpatico. We knew sort of what each other were thinking at the end of that conversation, and we're really appreciative that each of us had a chance to listen to what the other had to say. So those things do happen.
It's a prime example, and it does. It happens often, I feel like.
Yeah. So, you know, think about these things prior to, you know, have these conversations with us. Once you get under contract, there are also some things that you should be doing, and I'll let Tanner take that away.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we kind of touched on this already in what we have said, but, you know, when you are under contract for something, you don't have to get a home inspection, but I would recommend it for a number of reasons. I think a lot of lenders would recommend it for a number of reasons, but, you know, one of them being you can attend these home inspections and you can ask questions about what they find. I mean, the home inspector's there doing the actual home inspection. And again, you're allowed to be there, walking around with them, see the findings, and they'll let you know if things are wrong with the property or things you should worry about, or look, you know, like, hey, maybe you might want to look into this a year or so after you purchase, stuff like that. So, you know, they call them walk and talks. And I feel like that's something that's super important to have done, number one, but also to be a part of and be there to ask questions. That's how you know if something's wrong with your property.
Totally.
That's so important. Also, reviewing the property's history and disclosure statements. So there's a couple different like websites that I can think off the bat that are free to the public for you to go and research any home that you might be interested in. I know SDAT.com. That's something where you can look up a property's history. You can see when it sold, who it sold to. And those are important things that you kind of want to take into consideration, especially if you're looking to buy a home. It tells you the history of the property, again, when it sold, things like that. So, and also sellers are kind of supposed to be telling you if there's something wrong with the house.
Right.
Like that's supposed to be part of the whole disclosure package. So you definitely want to ask about it, but that should be included anyway. And then just kind of evaluating the long-term value and potential resale of the property. So this is where we talk about things like crime and school again. So you want to do your research into the communities of the places that you're looking to buy in. What schools are around the area? What are the local shops? And, I don't know, what's the crime rate going on? So your real estate agent's there to help you look for tools to find that information. However, it is your due diligence as buying a home to look into where you're buying the home.
Because real estate agents cannot talk about that stuff. They can't talk about crime. They can't talk about school. So it's really incumbent upon you as a purchaser to do that research ahead of time.
They can tell you where you can look for these things and these items, but again, you're the one buying the home and you're the one that wants to know. So why would you not kind of look it up, kind of thing? And then consulting with a real estate agent. I know a lot of people. I shouldn't say a lot of people. Some people frown upon even getting a real estate agent involved, and that's fine. That's your own prerogative. But they are important. They are here for a reason. They have tools to help you. They've got resources. They know people. They're a tool themselves. So do your due diligence by at least talking to one. If you've got questions that you have, they're just as important, as we are. So I definitely think that consulting with one of them would be super important. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I would just adding on top of that. I think if you're hesitant to get a real estate agent involved, I think maybe you talk to somebody like Tanner or I, and we know who the good real estate agents in certain areas are, and so if there's somebody that we think that you would jive with, or we think that you would find, just very valuable, we would not hesitate to make that connection and introduce you to that person. So, certainly lean on us for that kind of information. If you're hesitant, I know everybody knows a million realtors, but, we actually work with real estate agents every day. So we know who is doing business. We know who does a good job. And, we'd be happy to make that connection for you.
Yeah. I mean, the communication we have with them, and it is very much like letting us know what's going on in the market, what we don't see in our office or on the computer and stuff like that. So we are very much a team when it comes to helping you purchase a home.
And that's part one. So, this is a 2-part episode, like we said in the beginning. Part 2 will come at you next week. We're going to talk about things like, managing the emotional part of this. There's psychological factors. Talk about things like post-purchase strategies. After you've purchased the home, some ways to not regret what you just purchased, and then give you some tools and resources that you can use as well. So tune in next week. Let us know what you think. And if you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Tanner or I.
Yeah, have a great day.
All right, bye.
Bye.